our COVID survival toolkit. Pastor Andrew here again, and with me today is a very, very special guest. His name is Mark Spain, and he's with the Small Business Association. He's with the SBA, and we're really honored to have a man of your caliber, Mark, and it's just been such a pleasure just to get to know you in the midst of very, very difficult times. Today we're going to be talking about how we get through this season of coronavirus when it comes to small business and entrepreneurs. And so, Mark, could you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and we can take it from
Sure. Yeah, my name is Mark Spain. Like Pastor Andrew, I'm a believer. We have things in common, so that will give you the foreground on my faith-based. Basically involved with commercial banking since 1970, many of those years here in Hawaii as well as on the U.S. mainland. I joined the SBA in March of 2012, and I've been in the midst of being the subject matter expert here for lending, working with all the major institutions, some more active in the lending side than others. But I have no difficulty in telling you two things. If I don't have the answer for your question, I'll get it for you. Wow. And so I'm more than happy to be interactive with my war room in Washington, D.C., Victor Parker, our administrator, Jovita Carranza. And so, so far, I've probably answered over 2,000 questions in the last week, and I'm prepared to answer yours today for the faithful.
Wow. You were just giving me, bringing me up to speed as far as what you have been doing. You're telling me about how many loans you've been giving out. Can you kind of give us just to help us see what the capacity in which you're dealing with?
We're dealing with two issues. Number one, the original allocation for the Small Business Paycheck Protection Plan, which has been the primary emphasis, primarily because of its ease of access. Okay. And as of right now, probably, and it's changing at roughly 800 applications a day so far here in just Hawaii, American Samoa, and Guam. And at this point, we have the count as of last night. I'll be probably pulling another run again on Sunday after services with our local pastors here. And at this point, probably will be close to 5,600 loans, over 1.1 billion for Hawaii and American Samoa and Guam businesses. That is our count so far. And that is strictly an unpublished count because we deal with the national numbers that are in the press. But I can tell you that those are the loans that have been approved, not just submitted. And now the disbursements for those loans are scheduled to start on the PPP side as early as Wednesday, according to public press statements said today on the news media, not information that I have uniquely. And the other loan, called the EIDL loan, is being done through the SBA itself, whereas the PPP loans are being done through the banks here in our locality.
So just because this is very new to me, could you explain to me how do I qualify for these loans and how do I apply for them?
Well, basically, to qualify, it's really going to be a decision by your banker. We have some bankers that are a little bit more, shall we say, liberal, and we have some that are a little bit more conservative. So I would think, as far as the Paycheck Protection Plan, feel very much free to work with your a local banker of choice. It doesn't have to be one that you deposit with. So far, to give you an idea, probably the three major banks that are involved with the applications to the greatest extent are American Savings Bank, Central Pacific Bank, and also First Hawaiian. Then after that, by following up on that end, is Bank of Hawaii. And so those are the four that are most prominent. There are also credit unions that are doing it on a smaller scale. By that, I mean just serving their customer base, and their customer base is not as large. But just to give you a clue, the largest institution so far that I mentioned of the four, they have done over 1,700 applications serving the community that have been approved. 1,700 just for one institution.
Wow. So so how do I find these applications? Are they online? How do I?
The best thing to do. Yes. The best thing to do is go to your banker on the PPP plan. Okay. If we just focus on the payroll protection plan, that is the best way to get the information you need. That way it's most current because, like me, Even though we're talking on Easter weekend, the banks are getting updated information as we speak, and they have a hotline number that is for them to use in the case they have questions where maybe someone's application may be a little bit outside the box, let's say. Let me put it this way. The box is pretty big, okay? Yes. There's not a narrow, it's not like we're passing the camel through the eye of the needle. I'll put it this way. It's easier for the needle to be given to the camel. And that should give you an idea that we're not dealing with a lot of traditional underwriting for the loans. Entrepreneurs are definitely going to be given first consideration. And I think it's fair to say that we have done more loans this very week, ending last Friday and continuing, than we've done since 1953 as a district, if that gives you a comparison.
Wow. So you're saying that I can go and apply for these loans, and now how do I know when I'm going to get? I think that's a big question, right? As far as the
yes,
plan.
I think the process of looking at the PPP loan, it was introduced a week ago yesterday as a result of the congressional signing and president signing into law the CARES Act.
Okay.
But your banker on the Paycheck Protection Plan, and I think, Pastor Andrew, as you recall, I sent you the interim final rule. Share that with your entrepreneur community there at First Assembly. Yes. And I think it's very appropriate that you utilize that as your guide and also circulate it widely, because then if they have that piece of information with them, you can then go into your banker and talk about what they're using as a reference, let's say, on a given question. Notwithstanding, that rule was published a week ago Thursday, and there obviously are adjustments and policy changes being communicated to the lender through subsequent emails. But it is almost like, let's say, it's one book of the gospel, okay? The other books are being written. And so at this point, feel comfortable in taking that document as your core document for guidance.
Could you go over it one more time, explain that document one more time for those who haven't read
it? It's called the Interim Final Rule. It is the rule that was included in the CARES Act by the Secretary of the Treasury. His name is Secretary Mnuchin. And Secretary Mnuchin allowed for that interim final rule to be used as our foundation for initiating the origination of the Paycheck Protection Plan loans.
So we have something called the Paycheck Protection Plan, right? Is there any
PPP? Yes.
PPP. Is there anything else for an entrepreneur that they would have access to that they should be looking for besides the PPP?
Well, there's the EIDL loan, and that's called the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and that can be applied for as well. And on that one, you go up to sba.gov, okay. SBA, Sam Bravo Apple.gov, yes. And it will direct you to the EIDL, what they call the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and Advance. That is on that website, and you'll go to it, and then you can follow the instructions to the streamlined application.
I know that as I was reading up on this, one of the biggest, another primary concern or big concern is also taxes. Can you address that for small businesses?
Taxes at this point are not within the province of the CARES Act. I would suggest taxes, issue of forgiveness of taxes, anything that should be really directed to your tax professional, because they, like our industry in issuing the loans, they're given guidance, and you can get that guidance from a number of sources here in Hawaii. That could be your tax advisor. It could be your tax preparer. If they don't know, they need to take the same responsibility that I have said to you up front. If I don't know the answer, I will get it for you. But on the tax issue is not really the focus. If anything, we have already seen what they're doing with taxes at the federal level. I'd expect the state to do the same, and that is to relax the filing deadline.
Okay. Well, maybe after, I have some questions on that, but we can talk about that after. Are there other things that just on a general, overall arching scale that an entrepreneur, small business owner should know from the SBA?
Not from SBA so much, because we're the delivery. The real decision maker is the U.S. Treasury. We, in our EIDL program, we're doing it according to our own decision making. But when we get into the Paycheck Protection Plan, since we're using the full resources and the banks are getting a U.S. government guarantee, not an SBA guarantee, it is best to say that the local Chamber of Commerce, Hawaii Chamber of Commerce, under put it this way, I make sure I don't miss her name. McNamara, I believe, is the leader of the Hawaii Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
There also, of course, is information based upon individual industries that are being published. For example, like the payroll support companies like Altrez, they're publishing their own information as they interpret the rules and regs. But the SBA right now, if it is on the website, you feel free to look at all the questions that you can possibly answer. In addition to asking for the application, there is a number of what we call informational sources, how to learn more type of prompts so you can get more detail.
Okay. And I know that I want to say thank you also for sending me FAQs, frequently asked questions. You said you've been getting how many? Like over 2,000 questions.
Yes.
So I know you have been inundated. So I just want to say thank you for just being there for all of our small businesses. I think small businesses is the heart of our community, is heart of our economy. So I have a couple of questions here from some members of my membership, if I could read them to you.
By all means.
So I tried to start off with some of the more general ones, and I think we kind of covered those already, which is what's the good news? Ask openly and let Mark fill in the gap. People need and want good news. And how long is it going to take to get the money? I think that's the first one that a lot of them
the good news. First loans were funded by American Savings Bank and also Hawaii National Bank and others that perhaps have actually started funding as of Thursday on the 9th of April. So the loans are already started to be funded. And I think the greater volume of them, as they've been approved, will start occurring more after the Easter week because they're doing system maintenance right now. And they actually did it from almost 9 o'clock in the evening last night to 3 o'clock this morning, our time. And so I think the volume is going to increase, materially increase in terms of disbursements into the bank account that they have specified. Mm-hmm. It won't be by check predominantly. It'll be coming through the ACH system.
Okay.
And it'll be occurring now. It's going to be like growing small and then getting larger in volume as the days go on.
So they can expect, if they've made an application, filled out the application for the PPP, that they can be expecting that to come in as soon as you're saying this week.
Here's the good news. If they've already filed for the application, they can check with their banker. The banker can see the same list that I'm looking at that's updated on a daily basis, and it's approved. They have the approval date, and typically it's within 10 days of the approval date that the money will flow.
Wow, that is good news. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Next, I have. I says, what types of aid are being made available for small businesses? Did we cover that? We covered that, right?
We actually have more. There also is the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, DBED, is working on support for, obviously, in a complement to the SBA. That's the State Department of Tourism, obviously. And then you also have the USDA, United States Department of Agriculture, through their two wings called the Farm Service Agency and also the Office of Rural Development. They're working with our farmer community. And at this point, even farmers can apply for the PPP loan at the decision of the lender. So that is good because typically under the normal statute for SBA, farm borrowing and farm support is all given to USDA. But right now, I can tell you that there have been farmers who have applied, and we're going to anticipate their approval. It's been approved already, I should say. It's not a matter of anticipating, but we want to get the message out that that is an increased area of opportunity. Those who are farming, which at the beginning were considered maybe not to participate, they had to go to USDA. But based upon what they have just received, you now, if you're a farmer who raises crops for resale, you have the ability to be a user of the PPP plan.
Okay, great. I have here, so thank you for explaining all of the extra aid that is available. So how do we get, it says, what do small business owners need to do to get this other aid that you were talking about?
It's a good question. I think the resources for the SBA-related portals, both the Economic Injury Disaster Loan and the PPP, the portal being the banks are taking care of, the payroll plan, and the Economic Injury Plan is being done by SBA. Those, of course, are already been discussed. To
Yes.
get to the other areas, you have to call them. And let me explain why. We had to add 3,000 seats to our call center for the idle loan because we didn't have that many staff. Normal disaster loans are local or regional, like what we have here in Hawaii. If we had, like over the last 2 years, we've had economic injuries, of course, for the lava flow on the Big Island. But we had to add 3,000 seats, and it's growing in the call center that services the idle loans. And that came from the private sector. And those call centers who do that are coming from basically the financial services industry. Names, if I were to say who they are, it's not appropriate to promote them, but it's their capabilities that are brought to the table. The same thing for the Paycheck Protection Plan. If I told you who the contractor is behind that, they just added 4,000 seats to that call center, 2 different numbers.
Wow.
So that call center is mostly for lenders because we want the lenders to be the givers of information on the paycheck plan, on the idle plan. If they want to talk about the idle plan, I can give you an 800 number. If you want to file for an economic injury disaster loan, I'll give you that 800 number now.
Yeah,
It's 659-2955.
okay. And what we can do also is I can put that number in our link on this YouTube channel. And so afterwards, I'll get it from you. And so if you need this number, you can just click on it. Just look underneath this video and you can get that. I have another question from a catering company owner. Her name's Jessica Harrison. She said, I own a catering company and manufacturing plant. I have 2 employees and pay into unemployment insurance and workman's comp. What small business incentives do they have for her employees?
I'm not so much talking about incentives. It's called eligibility. The Paycheck Protection Plan is based upon payroll. I'll give you several categories.
Okay.
Some companies only have W-2. So obviously benefits that are paid to the employee are included in the base number that's considered the average monthly for the purposes of the payroll protection plan. But other small businesses have maybe up to 4 categories of compensation.
Wow.
And those 4 categories include, first of all, W-2. The second would be like Altrez, where they provide the labor to you, but they actually are the employer of the individual. So obviously in that category, you use the invoice that comes from Altrez to be a part of your compensation cost. And then number 3 is anyone that really relies on, this is like doctors and other medical providers, they use nurses almost exclusively on a 1099 basis because they may work for 1 or 2 physician practices. Then the 4th one, of course, is dealing with the owner themselves, where they may do a draw. And so they take all the draw amounts that they have done throughout the year of 19, average it, obviously aggregate it together, and then they divide it by 12 to come up with a monthly amount. So I have had a number of firms, small businesses, that have all 4 categories.
Wow. Wow. Well,
so the key thing is you aggregate your compensation. Okay. Those are the incentives you have to go to your banker and lay out the information so they can properly make the application work for you.
Okay. Thank you. That was really good. I have another question from Neil Arroyo. He has his own, he works for a video company. And he says, maybe can you have Mark explain the new allowance for small business owners to receive unemployment from the state? I have a single member LLC. What options do I have?
Well, obviously, single member, if he's a single member LLC, does he have any employees? If not, let's say he's the only employee, using that example. You can file under the idle loan, and you're considered one person, and your idle loan gives you an advance of $1,000 per employee. So under that illustration on the economic injury loan, he would get a $1,000 check, which is forgivable. Okay.
Wow.
Then if he gives the information that he needs to do all of the costs he's trying to cover for the economic injury loan, that is an application. It goes to SBA.gov. It's a very streamlined application. They ask very specific questions. And if he's got his information on his financials ready to go, he doesn't have to upload no documents. Wow. All he does is self-affirm that the information is correct to the best of his knowledge or her knowledge. Okay, so what you have there, that's simple. When it comes to the sole proprietor who works typically with a Schedule C, that is going to be done with the banks. So as of yesterday, Friday, those who are just casual 1099, they don't necessarily have a specific focus. Let's use a gardener, for example.
Mhm.
And let's assume, hypothetically, that that gardener gets multiple 1099s. If he provides more than $600 worth of services, then obviously he files as a sole proprietor. He uses the gross revenue, and then that gives him, how much does he pull out of that gross revenue for his own living expense? That covers all of his expenses of providing for his household, separate from the business itself. That, of course, the banks will work with him on, and the individual or sole proprietor was permitted to start filing yesterday. So that hopefully gives you a good recap.
Okay, great. Uh, this is a question from Brett Henderson. He has his own online marketing business. It says,
Mm-hmm.
that, when do provisions kick in for corporations? What if I am a single person operation like you were just talking about? Does it help? Does it only help multi-person operations? I heard that it doesn't apply to self-employed. What qualifies as self-employed?
Well, first of all, self-employed is eligible. There is no distinction between LLCs, corporations, S corps. If you're a C corp, for example, or obviously partnerships, all are eligible. The sole proprietor, that is the person who does not file outside of the 1040, files strictly as a sole proprietor, and he has the Schedule C information that he used for his 2018 taxes, because no one has technically filed for 2019. So there is no truth that the corporations can't file. The key question is he an S corp or is he a C corp? Well, either way, if he has his financials, he's going to be able to file for the PPP plan.
Okay, great.
No one's excluded. As of yesterday, no one is excluded from filing. The
Oh,
last party coming to the table was
wow.
the independent contractor.
Wow. Okay. Going back, Jessica has two more questions. She says, "What is required to qualify uh, a business for this money? What? I guess what is? Yeah. What are some of the circumstances? I guess that would
It's
qualify."
best to go, if she's talking about, ask Jessica if you could on the follow-up, if you can unmute her. What is she referring to? It's helpful to refer to the idle loan or the PPP loan.
Okay. I just texted them earlier this week, so this is the questions that I'm just reading off. This
Okay, here's
follow
my suggestion. If it's a
Okay.
PPP loan, Andrew, if it's PPP, the banks help them with the information. I wouldn't want to give you detail. It's all included in the bank's application. Very straightforward. They just walk in, make sure they have their information about their payroll, the components of their payroll, and be prepared to answer those questions. And it's a very quick process.
Okay, yeah, because that was her next question. Do I need to have tax records, receipts, bank
You
statements?
don't have to, what you have to do is be honest, which I think I'm talking to a group of the faithful.
Yes.
Honesty is which brings the opportunity to apply. You
Okay.
self-affirm. The bank's only obligation is to look at the documents, confirm that they have seen them, and they move on. The key thing is payroll is the most important focus
Yes.
of what we're talking about on PPP.
Okay.
Idle loans. Let me get to you on the idle.
Yeah.
Idle loans, very similar. It's
Mm.
a very streamlined application. One thing that's common to both sides, you self-affirm the accuracy of the information you are providing. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So I have the last two questions. This is by Amy Craig. She has her own art. She teaches art classes, and she says also she too is a sole proprietor LLC and has upwards of 2,000 minutes in business minimum in business taxes yearly. I had read that since Hawaii was declared a federal disaster, that some of those could be reduced. Is that possible? I just filed my business taxes and I would need to amend. Would she need to amend
The
that?
two things is you're asking a tax question that's qualified for a CPA or a tax preparer. So ask for a tax preparer. They're very much up to date on that. Most people filed, of course, before the decree that extended the federal tax filing by 90 days for individuals.
Mhm.
The only thing I would ask of Amy is she filing on her 1040 or is she filing as an LLC with a either 1120 or a 1065? But all those questions could be best answered on the amendment point of view by her tax preparer.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a number of questions here that I actually skipped another one, had this very similar for taxes. And this is just the last one from Amy. It says, also, I stopped filing for the small business emergency loan as it seemed to be geared toward businesses that have a brick and mortar stores, employee payrolls, and many vendors to pay. I have none of those things. Was I correct?
No,
Okay.
revisit. I
Okay.
won't give her any details, just revisit the process. The key
Okay.
thing as a sole proprietor, most of the banks were handling those that had employees.
Mm,
Obviously, sole proprietors, Schedule C filers were eligible to file as of yesterday. If you were talking to your banker or contemplating filing before, all of those other categories were included, but now sole proprietors, single member LLCs can now file.
So you're saying that in the big picture, what I hear you saying is that if you file, all of the loans are going to start pouring in once somehow. I guess you're the one who's going to be receiving all of these applications, and then it's going to be sent back out. Is that the process, or are you?
Let me explain. Let's talk about it very simple. On the idle loan, the economic injury loan, which has two options, the advance as well as the normal loan, that is a loan for 30 years at 3.75% interest. If it's a nonprofit that's eligible, most of them are, it's going to be 2.75 interest. That loan is obviously based upon SBA creating it. They use the IRS to provide the funds directly into the checking account that is of record with the IRS. You can obviously mention, please send it to me by physical check, but that is something you take care of in our application process on the SBA.gov website. The PPP is going to be done very quickly compared to it had almost a 2-week later start. It looks like the idle loans and the PPP loans are now being dispersed at about the same time, even though the idle loans are in existence earlier. But that's all you have to do. We at SBA will not handle the money. IRS will handle it for the idle loan, and your banker will provide it for you on your PPP loan.
Okay. Well, that's some really, really good news in the midst of all of this. Our whole economy seems to be coming to a grinding halt, and I just want to say thank you for doing your part to get this thing going again. Is there anything that, in conclusion, is there anything that you can encourage all of our entrepreneurs and small business owners with, being that you have the vantage point that you do?
I have been, as I will give you a little bit of quick background, and I give you a little bit of encouragement from this, because I'm talking to a faith-based group, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The key thing is we know that episodes of these challenges have happened before. This is the first time that we've ever had one on this scale.
Mm.
And I will tell you that this government, whether Democrat or Republican, are very focused on making sure that our economy gets back to normal.
Mm.
I will tell you, more importantly, there is one person that's in control, and that's our Lord.
Yes.
That's that simple, okay? So what we do is there's an old adage, since I grew up in Missouri in the show me state, and it's my father's favorite phrase: worry is interest on a loan you never take out.
What?
So that means you have to have trust, you have to have faith in the relationship you have with your God, and you then move forward with the knowledge that to a human extent possible, this nation is rallying around much better than most people expected possible given the advent of this virus. I travel to Asia often, and I will tell you that we are emulated in most countries that I visit, Vietnam, because that's where I served in my country in the 60s. It's amazing. Those of people of Christian heritage particularly are really optimistic about the future. And we have to, as believers, we have to be similar that way. So if I'm talking to people who have different faiths, that's fine. That people have to understand that we're doing the best thing possible. I will tell you, it looks to be optimistic. And I think with what we see the president doing on the economic/medical team, he's assembling this coming Tuesday to use good judgment in how we reopen the economy. That's a very good sign, because you've heard him say, his words, not mine, sometimes the cure can be worse than the illness itself. And so what we're looking at is a balance that will restore our economy, because here in Hawaii, our hospitality and our services in that arena are obviously the largest of our total economy, or those that support it. So have faith, believe in the fact that in this special weekend for both Christians and Jews, we have a very good time to reflect and hope that everything will return to perhaps a new normal. We'll probably wash our hands a little bit more. We'll probably make sure we wear a mask a little bit longer. I've been one of the last ones, honestly, to wear a mask. But if that's what it takes, we show that we are able to comply. And thank you, Pastor Andrew, for the opportunity to share with you and your colleagues.
And if you feel like you can share, could I ask what makes you feel optimistic? Can you share that, or you can't?
Yes, I can. I think what makes me optimistic are three factors. First of all, this is my personal opinion, not SBA opinion. Okay, my personal opinion. This nation has always rallied when it's challenged, no matter what generation. I can tell you that people are more thoughtful, maybe today, than they were before.
Yep.
I can remember when I came back as a Marine veteran from Vietnam, I was told not to wear my uniform. Today, I'm thanked for wearing the uniform, and I still wear the uniform of the United States Marine Corps today in certain venues where I'm asked to speak. So I can tell you that it's the hope is the last. Everyone knows if we rely on each other, but more importantly, for those who have belief, they rely on their God.
Yes.
And we know as our own denomination or our own conversation with people of comparable belief, we have a strong, strong power. I'm optimistic not because of just man. I'm optimistic because of who is in control.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you, Mark, for making time. This has been such a privilege to be able to talk to you. And I just want to let you know that we are praying for you. You have such a important role in Hawaii's economy, and the role that you play is so important. And I want to thank you for making time for us today. And just want to encourage all of you who are out there, like if I haven't asked the questions that you need, I know that Mark has been so gracious to respond to my call, to take my calls, and he's been doing that for so many people. He said 2,000 questions were asked last week, and he's making the time and he's putting himself out there for us. So thank you, Mark, for all you do. And just pray that I know I totally agree. I see so many businesses helping out other businesses. I see hospitals helping out other hospitals. I see, and it's I don't know if it's just Hawaii or you're saying America, but it's just something about who we are as a people that I'm starting to see people rally together. And I think this is part of what you're talking about is, you're willing to come out and sacrifice your time to be there for us. So I want to say thank you, Mark.
Well, Pastor Andrew, let me say this. I'm a cancer survivor.
Wow.
I'm 74 years old. I have 10 underlying conditions associated with my war experience, including diabetes. God has put a hedge around me. Wow. And I feel as much energy and as much power. That's the ultimate hope that I can share as one individual. I have no difficulties. My team at the SBA, Jane Sawyer, the district director, Mary Dale, and others who are in our business opportunity on the contracting side, all of us are collaborating together. Wow. But when you look at that number, and the number will continue for a while, the inquiries, we welcome it. And you know best if your colleagues will reach out to you. That way I can get additional questions again. But sure. I'll put it this way. My faith sustains me. My faith is keeping me healthy. Awesome. Oh, yes, I do have to walk periodically, and I do walk here near my home to keep myself physically fit. But I just want you to know that we have a lot to be thankful for as we go through this challenge.
We do.
Remember Psalms 23.
I will. God's going to walk with us through this valley called the shadow of death.
Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you, Mark.